What's up, man?
Hey, not much. That was kind of some cool intro music going on there. What was that?
Oh, dude, I got these like lo-fi stress relief, relaxing music.
It sounded like Marilyn Manson or something.
Oh,
Play
really?
that again. Run that back real quick.
Really? Let's see. It's actually like it's got The Simpsons on. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, that's cool. But I think it was because you had the vibrating machine going at the same time. It sounded like some kind of a like just heavy machinery mixed with like some cool ambient music in the background. It was very interesting.
That does sound like Marilyn Manson. Dude, I'm a big Marilyn Manson fan, actually. I listen to a lot of his shit still to this day. Like Lunchbox is my favorite song from him.
Never got into him.
Oh, man. I mean, he did a lot of work with like video games like Resident Evil. I mean, he does, amazing stuff. It'll get you working out, get you hitting those those kettlebells hard too.
Hitting the kettlebells hard. I hit the kettlebells a little bit this week. Admittedly, I haven't hit anything too hard this week. I've been battling some kind of a respiratory cold or something that everybody's been getting. I don't know, it seems like every other person I talk to. What's that?
You got the C22.
I don't know what I got, but
you seem all right. That's good.
Yeah, it's weird. It comes and goes. It's kind of like deep in the chest. Which, by the way, I've been rocking the LCC gear. I actually dig these old shirts, man.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the new one coming out, like new logo, new graphics. I've heard that it's coming soon. That we'll see our first iterations of the new artwork in the very near future. So that'll be exciting. Put in some new merchandise,
some limited release. Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm just so here we go. 8:30, our weekly touch points on Left Coast Caveman way of life, all things nutritional modalities, fitness modalities, and mentalities for the week. I think we could spend a lot of time on the next on this topic, both topics, the nutritional modality and fitness modalities being the cold plunging. We decided that we were going to revisit that, and it's interesting because I'm really fascinated by the different modalities and there seems to be, with all the research that I've found this week on cold in general, cold plunging and cold plunge right now. I mean, Sacramento up near Sacramento, there's this new company out, Cold Plunge. That's anytime I researched anything. Did you run into those guys when you were doing some research as well?
No, I pretty much just kept it to the Wim Hof book that I read, and I was just going back to those and such. Yeah, kind of going to the source.
Well, it's funny because I ran into a lot of Wim Hof stuff too. I became more familiar with his story and kind of what got him into what he was doing with the tragedy of his wife and all of that kind of stuff. So it's funny that our research took us two different ways. Your devices probably know that you're more into you've been researching Wim Hof a lot lately, and my devices know that I'm developing for Left Coast Caveman a do-it-yourself plunge system and setup that you can download. It's coming soon to leftcoastcaveman.com. But it seems to me that there's no specific answers still. I mean, so going into this week's area of research for fitness modalities, talking about getting cold, getting uncomfortable every single week, and we've talked about how getting that cold and getting that discomfort, the benefit of the mental game and just bringing yourself to the dark place and having some kind of a quick mechanism through which everything that you might think is bothering you can quickly be wiped away in an instant through a cold plunge or a cold shower. But it says what I found is kind of like just base level, I guess metrics, if you will, was like an ice bath should be at 38 to 45 degrees and your goal is 3 minutes. Yep. That's like what I've heard is kind of like the pinnacle of it. But I'm fascinated by And it says like for every, and they use the metric of 70 gallons. I guess it's pretty much like a standard size bathtub that's not completely full. But for every 20 pounds of ice you add to that 70 gallons, you should decrease that time by, I think it said 2 to 3 minutes, meaning like the colder that it gets, you shouldn't do longer periods of time, but that you can get the same benefits at 50 degrees for like 6 minutes or longer. And so I'm not in like it talked about like if you're going to start out, you should start with a shower, like a 5-minute cold shower, which is going to be at like 66 to 70 degrees. Some of the core benefits, and I'll run through them real quick. I mean, just regulating blood sugar, stress levels reduced, inflammation reduced, mood enhanced, the feeling of accomplishment, the feeling like carrying through that throughout the day of being able to accomplish tasks. So if you're like maybe more ADHD, ADD, like have difficulty accomplishing tasks, there's evidence to suggest that implementing this kind of fitness modality will help with that. But I don't know that I'm 100% like have landed, and I'll be interested what you have to say about this at like this is exactly what you need to do for. I think it's kind of like the Coast Caveman way of life, that it's a path and that it's a journey, and like maybe right now for you it's just a 5-minute cold shower on the coldest setting, and maybe that has all the benefits that a 3-minute 38 degrees cold plunge could do for somebody else. Because somebody like Wim Hof, he can go to extremes that other people can't. So maybe it's kind of a variable thing, but the idea is like do something at least uncomfortable and at least for 3 minutes. What do you think?
Yeah, in thinking about it more, I was trying to understand like the mechanisms behind it, but I taking a step even before that. I mean, first and foremost, it's a meditation. Right? I mean, you think about you're thrust into this state, and a lot of people will do some breathing, prior to, especially if you're doing an actual cold plunge where you're getting into some Arctic type water. But it's a meditation, man. When you're there, like you're not thinking about, picking your kid up from the game during that exposure. You're not thinking about some TPS report bullshit that you need to submit to your boss. You're literally right there in the moment. You're breathing and you're feeling your body. You have that interoception, which is like that connection, the mind body. You're feeling everything, and it's a meditation. It's like, I forgot about that part of it as I'm sitting there suffering. Well, I wouldn't say suffer. I've been doing it for a while, so it's not so much suffering. Is it comfortable? No, it never is. It's not comfortable. But do you habituate to it after a few minutes? Yeah, and then it's no big deal at all. So that was kind of something I think that's interesting. It gets kind of lost. It's like the whole experience of cold is a meditation. And I think you should kind of approach it that way also. And to your point, afterwards, feeling good, right? That's after you meditate, you feel good. You were disciplined. You took time out of your day to focus on the self, do something that's difficult. But also, I think there are some benefits to it. And I think that's where I've gotten a little hung up on the differences. Is like, well, what's that delta difference between that cold shower, which is, and looking at, they say benefits start at 60 degrees. My shower gets down to 59, which was pretty cool. I thought it was higher than that. In Boston, their showers get down to like 40 degrees, which is, that's freaking cold.
Probably in Tahoe too. I remember the showers in Tahoe being really cold because it comes from the groundwater.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, well, what's the difference, between like how much more of a benefit you get from, say, a 5-minute, 60-degree shower, or a 2 to 3 minute in something that's maybe slightly above 32 degrees, right? So like because they all talk about the benefits from it. Well, what type of X factor you're getting from the harder one, which, I can only imagine with the ice. I don't get to do the ice one. I don't have an ice plunge or anything like that. Not to say I couldn't, construct one or use the, I guess you guys are in the production phase or the engineering phase of something like that. But it's like, well, I'd like to know what that is. And I couldn't find anything that would specifically talk about it. So there's got to be a difference. So I can only imagine, because I'm kind of thinking about this as like a chemotherapy, if you will, right? A little bit of harm, an insult to the body, something that's uncomfortable brings about, some change, some benefits at the end, but you have to experience it. And but that's something I think that's intriguing to me. And I don't know if you've done any cold plunges or like outside of just the standard shower or even your pool. And how cold is your pool getting?
It's getting down. The last I was down to 59.9 at one point. Is the coldest that I've swam lately. So yeah, I mean, so before, I think again, it's like, to answer that question, it becomes, what do you recognize as key differences as you develop your daily cold routine? And I think that getting uncomfortable in this format could we adopt it as I think we already have adopted it as sort of a left coast caveman tenet way of life, like a daily modality. But like, how do you enhance that once the cold shower is not enough? I mean, maybe the cold shower has the benefits, but how does it get more beneficial as it gets colder? It does. All the research that I found recommended, as you get colder, to really be more mindful of paying attention to your body and when to get out, like not to push yourself. And when you get to those extreme levels, like really pay attention to, it can be dangerous, if you're shivering too much, and to kind of get out. But so for that reason, to me, like the sweet spot seems to be in this zone so far, that what I've found. And because this is the coldest that I've regularly done it. And by regularly, I mean like every day. So getting down into like the 60 degree weather, and we'll continue to, maybe we revisit it and stay on this topic for a while as it gets colder, bring it back and start to notice what are those differences anecdotally, or those benefits that you notice as it gets colder. Because what I've noticed, a difference from going from showers to swimming in the cold, it's my pool water is colder than what I've ever been in the shower. The showers seem to be like pretty tolerable. And then the cold water, getting in the cold water is like shocking. It becomes harder to breathe.
Yeah.
But then you kind of like, there's an instant of, and like you're saying, in meditation, you got to get past your mind. And once you get past your mind, you're like, oh, this is like not so bad. You kind of shiver at first, and then you get into it, and it's almost like exhilarating in a way, but then it's almost exhausting. I get out and I feel like I worked out for 2 hours when it's only been a small amount of time. And I mean, some things that I've noticed is definitely like enhanced mood, just kind of like being able to handle stressful situations better, clearly, better sleep. And I don't know if that has something to do with the Lactobacillus reuteri as well. I mean, it's hard to isolate what modality has been contributing to more, but definitely better sleep since doing the daily swimming. Better blood flow, which was a surprising one to me, which also could be attributed to some of the probiotics, but definitely like an enhanced, like within, I would say, like 2 hours of like this, like maybe, so after I recover, after I get my body warm again, and let's say I eat something, and I'm like within those 2 hours of after, like, when you get like pumped at the gym and you can like feel your muscles like bursting, feeling like that. And I'm like, whoa, like what's going on here? Like I feel like an overall body, like euphoria type pump. And the only thing I can say that's different is that cold swimming.
Yeah, well, that's exactly one of the mechanisms that's affected by cold, is you're essentially shooting a signal to the body to release norepinephrine. So you're getting
epinephrine.
You're getting that fight or flight, which can be energizing. And in fact, that's another reason why like the breathing techniques so when your body stimulates the adrenaline response, it actually produces, I think it's interleukin 10, which is known to help regulate inflammatory cytokines and upregulate other white blood cell production. So that's where like the benefit of cold exposure, the benefit of the breathing exercises, which they're co-committing, can help you from an immune perspective. And the other thing, the big takeaway, I think, also is outside of the meditative part benefit of the cold exposure, is you're essentially like toning your vascular system, right? So, and it's kind of, wrote an article recently called Reconnect with Ancient Instincts. And this part, it's going to be a multifaceted series, but in this one, we explore cold exposure. And one of the things that cold exposure does, and I kind of like to use the analogy of like a muscle, right? When you work out a muscle, you stress it, and in response, like you develop these firing patterns where you can contract it better than before. As things go on, you create these neural patterns, these strengthened neural patterns, and you're able to contract it more, get more force out of it. And the same kind of concept happens with exposure to cold, meaning like your your vascular system constricts instantaneously, like autonomically, the whole body to essentially keep you warm, keep your internal organs warm, right? And so then you get out of it, then it expands again. And so anyways, the more you do that, like a muscle, it's better able to do that. And that's one of the reasons why so many of us have issues with the cold is because, I was kind of thinking from like, we talk about the climate crisis and all this. Well, what about like the climate control crisis? We're constantly walking around in just such a comfortable mode of Patagonian puff jackets and air conditioning heaters, and like you're never really cold. And so that our body, it almost atrophies the ability for it to attenuate, to regulate against temperature. Like, in ancient times, it was probably doing that all the time, right? Because you were constantly exposed and your body was able to adapt quickly so that you could be comfortable and stay alive. And we've almost lost that instinct, if you will. So by adding this to your daily routine, it's almost like you're awakening that. You're remembering those ancient instincts, and your body's able, and it feels good. And it's like, well, why does this feel good? Well, you're reawakening these old instincts that we've forgotten. And I think, and then going back to the benefits of it, well, think about like what the vascular system does. Well, it transports fuel, it transports oxygen, it transports like all the fuels that your body uses. It transports the waste, it transports your white blood cells, it transports, you think about the importance of that. Like I didn't think about the overarching, like the benefits of it, like all that. Like that's an important system to work out. And I mean, as much as I work out my body, that's one that I don't really work out because I live in a climate controlled world. So starting to think about it from that perspective kind of helped me rationalize why I'm doing this. Like, does it help immune system? Well, yeah, potentially it does. Does it help you burn calories because now you're shivering a little bit? Yeah. Is it a meditation, that all the benefits with that? Yes. And then you're also adding the breathing technique to it, which the benefits, they seem very interrelated there. It decreases your heart rate from 15 to 30 beats. Like, that one, I came across. I don't know how much I believe that, because if I decrease my heart rate by 30 beats, I might be dead. So that's probably not so accurate. But for somebody that has resting at around 90 or more, that could be really beneficial. So just looking at all that, like, wow. And this is something I've done really consistently over the last few months, and it's sticking with me. And now, can I put my finger on exactly all the benefits? Oh, I definitely feel my immune system better now. No, but for whatever reason, I'm drawn to continuing doing this. Much like every Friday I run 5 miles. Yeah, but it's something I do, and this is now something that falls in that same category of just, that's a check mark for the day. It's what I do.
Absolutely, check mark. And I love how you frame it up, and something that we definitely continue to develop is the awakening of the ancient instincts, and just how cognizant are you of those things, and how many of those can you fit in throughout the day? Like, how many people don't expose themselves to sunlight every day or get their bare feet on solid ground outside? So that's great. And thinking about, like, that's what we do here at Left Coast Caveman too. It's like, we understand the left coast aspect of it, the fact that we're all surrounded by technology, we're surrounded by modern environment, but how much of our ancient selves can we bring back into the mix for the sake of differentiating ourselves and increasing our well-being, and differentiating ourselves by increasing our well-being. So it's like, when I'm at a hotel traveling and it's 49 degrees in the morning and windy, and somebody's going outside and looks and see, who's that crazy guy out there swimming, and like standing there stretching in the morning, like inviting the cold. It's like, who knows who that inspires, and then you throw this on, they're like, oh, that's what they're doing. It's like, if you see somebody doing something weird, or doing some grounding, or doing something that appears to be abnormal, but something about it is intriguing and strengthening, it's chances are you're running into a Left Coast Caveman. So yeah, those things that you or what Left Coast Cave lady, let's not forget the ladies, but that's a good way of kind of segueing into the nutritional modalities too, because it's like, everything that you choose should be based around kind of that primal instinct, and what is going to increase my well-being, what is going to differentiate me from the herd of people who just do the quick and easy and the comfortable. This week we started to dive into the whole essential amino acids and start to crack the top on that can, because it's one that can go many different ways. And I'll introduce the topic by just explaining a couple modalities that I do with regard to essential amino acids. Like, one thing that I've been doing a lot lately is having protein in my coffee in the morning, like a full spectrum of amino acids in a vanilla protein powder format, because like instead of using a creamer or a dairy creamer or something like that, I'm getting all essential amino acids in my coffee. I used to do the fasted, but for me right now, it's like, again, with the level of training that I'm doing, with the fitness training that I'm doing, it's important for me to stay muscular. And if I do the fasting in the morning, and I do with all of this swimming and biking and running and still strength training that I'm doing, I get too skinny, I get too scrawny, you know. But with like maintaining the full spectrum of amino acids and proteins throughout the day, and like really focusing on that for a fitness or for a nutritional modality, like ensuring that I'm getting that all day, almost throughout the day, whether it's the protein first thing in the morning in the coffee, or I'm doing a fasted, or I'm doing just a black coffee and I'm taking an amino acid supplement, all 9 essential amino acids in a supplement alongside it, like before my quote fasted exercise. Like, I'm not getting solid food, but I'm getting the amino acids. And what I've noticed is, even though I'm doing all of this like intense training and consistent training, like I have a training modality right now that's like every single day, no days off, really. So it's doing a minimum every day. I'm able to, like, I've noticed, like, I'm still like maintaining a lot of musculature. I'm getting stronger. Yeah, like I'm able to just like go in and lift 70-pound dumbbells and press them like no problem, you know. And that's a lot of weight for me. I know that there's going to be people, but I don't take any like I'm not supplementing outside of protein or anything like that, you know. So I've noticed that, you know, less jitters when I do that with caffeine. And I think it's the leucine, not leucine, but theanine. Like L-theanine was one. So each amino acid seems to have its own benefit, but I tend to lean on having all 9 essential amino acids in everything that I take. Kind of just, I don't know what benefit I'm doing, other than it seems for me to be able to really help me like maintain muscle.
Yeah. And what kind of protein are you drinking in the morning? Is it a whey?
It's a whey protein. Yeah, it's a whey protein.
So I wouldn't be surprised if it had more than just the essentials in there. It probably has the 11 other non-essentials as well.
It could. So there's that I do. So I really focus on the amino acids. I do that, and then I'll do like I thought I brought it in here. I guess I didn't, but I'll do an amino acid supplement. And then also, like, I really focus on, with the grains and the carbs that I eat, almost primarily I'm going to be eating like an amaranth or a quinoa, because those have all 9 essential amino acids in them. So I really focus on like always having a full protein throughout the day, all day.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was trying to pull up some of my old My Plate meals that I recorded, and I do this periodically just to make sure my macros are on track, to understand like baseline for protein. I don't quite remember how much I was getting, and so the whole point of supplementing is, well, you're not getting enough, perhaps, right? That's like the assumptive. If you're going to supplement with something, you don't need to take more. You don't need to supplement with it if you're getting adequate amounts through your diet. And I eat a pretty protein forward diet. I mean, meat on every meal. So I think the RDA is like 0.3 grams per pound. That's for a non-active, everyday, non-caveman person. But for the left coast guys and gals that get after it, the recommendation is probably around like 0.5 all the way up to like 2 grams per pound of body weight, which that's a lot. So I mean, for me, I'm about 200 pounds. So just like simple math theory, anywhere from probably like 100 grams to 150 a day, and that's a lot of protein. So it is. You know, and that's, I don't take a protein supplement outside of like my collagen in the morning, which I do, every day in the morning, I guess technically break the fast with that. But I think with the types of activity I'm doing with jujitsu, and I need to provide my body with those constituent parts for joint health, ligament health, tendon health, and such. But this thought pattern has got me thinking like, hey, maybe I'm deficient in protein. Maybe, to take a deeper look and understand what my needs are. And as you've definitely, intuitively, you're saying, hey, like you're feeling it. I need more of this. And so you're supplementing with it. And so that's kind of where I think it's interesting. And then there's all these different types of proteins out there. You got your whey proteins, you have your hydrolyzed whey proteins, all these like distillates of whey protein, your collagen protein, and then you get into your branched chain amino acids, which is another interesting one. And I don't take those. Are you taking any BCAAs at all?
Not really, no. I mean, because I lean on the EAAs if I'm going to supplement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, I just did some preliminary research on it. I've never taken BCAAs. I know it's popular. I know a lot of people, tout the benefits of it, but I really didn't know what the benefits were or what the actual function is. Because, if you can get it all in a whey protein, why would you, pay more for less, essentially? Because what a BCAA is just distilled down peptides, right? And it's, I guess, usually only 3, like the ones that are most involved allegedly in muscle synthesis, which is I think it's leucine, isoleucine, and valine. I think those are the ones. Now, don't quote me. Maybe I'm misrepresenting that. But I guess the reason for those to take it prior to a workout, it's less harsh on your digestive system, and you go, get after it, do your run, do your whatever modality you're doing, and you're able to have those constituent parts for on the spot muscle catabolism or anabolism, excuse me. So that's kind of interesting. I was like, okay, well, maybe that's something I need when I'm running or before jujitsu, or, I'm not sure. I mean, once again, it goes down to how much protein. I think the starting place to understand, do I need to supplement with protein or branched chain amino acids, is to understand, well, what's my baseline looking like every day? And then I think from there, titrate in, okay, well, maybe I'm 50 grams shy a day. Maybe I need to add those in, or on heavier training days or recovery days, maybe those are days where I need to add some more as well. So, this is more of a preliminary conversation, but I think there's got to be a lot more research that I'm going to have to do prior to one, saying what's cave approved and what isn't, but also understanding my needs and then experiencing that with adding in some different supplements. So, I think that on this one, the conversation is definitely going to have to continue. So in yours, in the morning, how many grams are you taking? Do you know off top?
It's probably about 10, unless,
okay. Yeah, it's not very much.
It's not a lot, no. But I think what you're touching on something too is, there's a couple questions that I think we dive into for a micro program, let's call it. And just so everybody knows, we're talking about carving out micro programs. So we developed this conversation further, leave tidbits. I mean, a part of this is just discovery for you and I, right? Finding out what is cave approved and what is a cave implementation for everything that we talk about. It's going to be different for everybody. It depends on what your goals are, right? For me, I mentioned that I'm doing a lot more cardio and I'm wanting to maintain muscle, and I don't want to go into that catabolic state. So it's important for me to onboard a little bit of protein in the morning, so I'm not eating into, I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm not trying to carve up or anything like that. I'm trying to maintain and grow and gain and because for me it's important to still be able to go into that gym and grab the 70 pounders and crank them up. When I start to get more into the fasting and catabolic and where I'm losing weight through all of that training and not doing the essential amino acids, I'll notice that I do lose a lot more quickly, very quickly. So I'll do a little bit of both. It depends. Like a scoop of, I wish it was right in front of me. We should do the product review section of this maybe midweek, or maybe on one of these casts as part of the micro program, just go through some products that I use. But I think the whey protein, 1 scoop would be 20 grams of protein. So maybe I get up to 15. But for the essential amino acids, let's say I'll take a scoop of that with water and sip that throughout the workout, or I'll do that with some collagen protein as well. So I'm getting probably another 18 to 20 grams of protein and a full spectrum of essential amino acids, before, during, and immediately after working out. So I'm never in a state, I'm not eating food. So I still feel like my body, because if you eat a big breakfast and try to do cardio, it's just disaster, right? But I've noticed if I just take the amino acids with water in the morning, I still feel as though I still am able to maintain that like flow state cardio that I get with a fasted state, but I don't lose as much and get into like a catabolic state. I still feel like I'm able to maintain my muscle. So it's kind of depends on what you're, depending on the cave implementation of this modality. I would say it depends on what your goals are. If you're doing a lot more cardio, I mean, I would recommend I do like a half a serving before I work out and a half a serving during, with like a serving of collagen. I do it like together.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think it also depends on the type of cardio you're doing, right? So I'm a big fan of fasted cardio. Obviously, I'm a big fan of zone 2 training, which is not particularly arduous, right? It's you're keeping your heart rates around 130. You could, like, if you're using the talk test, you could have a conversation with somebody, say on the phone. Not that you would do this, but if you were, but they would know that you're working out, but you're having no issues really keeping up with the conversation. So it's like I would say low threshold type cardio. And when you're doing more zone 2, I mean, one of the benefits of that is you're primarily using like fats as a fuel. So it's like, well, how does that influence, like if you're taking a protein, are you using it as a fuel? Because you're in that mode, you're not really, excuse me, you're not using, like, you're not catabolizing your muscles to fuel you. You should be using your fat. Now, you have very low body fat, so maybe that's an issue, and that's why this does help. Whereas like me, I have more, and so I'm maybe able to get away with doing more of that without having supplementation, because currently I don't take any protein. And as well, and that's the thing, that what's so interesting about it is like, well, maybe that's a problem. It's something I'm going to be reevaluating over the next month as to, is there a benefit? Do I need it? I mean, I think, and as I said, I think that's the first step, understanding what I'm taking in every day and then titrating in to find out, hey, let's shore up that gap, and then let's see if there's any sort of discernible difference in performance, recovery, muscle mass. I mean, I don't know. I think it's interesting, and I've always shied away from doing all that because there's a lot of calories associated with a protein. Like with a 25 grams of protein, a couple scoops or so. I mean, usually that's anywhere from 150 to 200 incremental calories. Also, with me, I don't need that on a daily basis. But whereas maybe you would if you're it sounds like you're doing a lot more cardio, ramping all that up for the triathlon. So it might be more beneficial to have increased instances of supplementation. So I'm really intrigued by this. I think maybe this is something I've kind of put my hands on my ears because I'm kind of an anti-supplement guy. But now I'm just thinking maybe I'm wrong and I need to reevaluate that.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of like a good value that we could give to listeners, as well as like keeping in mind this is the left coast caveman. I mean, if we're talking. And this is, again, it's intentional and situational. There are some things that we could clearly state are not cave approved, but there are things that we could state are cave approved depending on what your goals are. Could you get by and get in excellent shape and never touch a protein supplement or an essential amino acid supplement? Yes. The answer is yes, you can. And it depends, but I would say that is there room in your fitness and nutritional modalities for these supplements? And I would say yes, with the exception of, do you need BCAAs? There's a sticking point for me. Like essential amino acids I've found to be beneficial, steering away from artificials, trying to avoid like artificials and fillers and things of that nature. Like and that's why the product review section will be important to this micro series. And the same thing goes for protein. Can you use it? Yes, depending on your goals, but be very cognizant of like what kind you get and pure labels and like non-artificial ingredients and things of that nature. Simply because, like, to me, in order to like my personal fitness goal, for me to be like where I feel best, where I feel like I'm achieving higher levels of well-being, is when I can maintain strength and endurance and a muscular physique. Makes me feel good, makes me perform better, makes me feel better, makes me more confident, which brings better results into my life personally. That's me. For somebody else, it could be completely different, and it has to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. And to me, like eating a big breakfast and then hitting into cardio is not as beneficial as like just being able to take some powder in a drink that's clean, that still has a good nutritional deck. It has a good essential amino acid profile. I don't touch BCAAs. They never did anything for me. What I noticed most significantly, again, with this supplementation route is just being able to maintain and gain musculature and not lose and not lose energy too. Like I've noticed like sustainable energy throughout a long series. I mean, we're talking about when I do like when I do a swim followed by a bike followed by a run, that could take me like 2-3 hours to accomplish. I'll get up at 4 a.m. and do it. And like keeping that protein on deck like helps me not bonk out. Like I get to the end of it and I'm like, okay, I'm still good. And so that's another element of it, is just, I think that Ben Greenfield writes about that in his book too, Beyond Fitness or something, or Beyond, I can't remember the name of it, but he talks about how like a lot of the triathletes and endurance athletes, they discovered that the essential amino acids is really what prevented them from bonking out in the long endurance event, that they used to think it was carbohydrates and sucking down all these like goo drinks and stuff like that. And that wasn't the case. It was the amino acids that, and the depletion of that made people bonk out. So just the endurance aspect of it too.
Oh man, I mean, then it could be something I definitely need for all my jiu-jitsu rounds. And I think there's a potential I'm leaving something off the table here, and I need to once again just reevaluate. And I was actually listening to his podcast with, I guess, the CEO or co-creator of that Keon supplement company, and I'll admit I was a little sold off just hearing what they were talking about in terms of protein quality. And anyways, they really got me thinking more about that as well. I think that was pretty instrumental to me coming to this conversation with, some quote unquote facts. And, I'll probably end up buying a few of those supplements and just seeing, what's going on. Like, is there a different, for me, I think if I had to identify the biggest need, so yeah, bonking, that definitely happens. I feel that from time to time, especially in some of those later matches. But also, my recovery isn't always the best. Like I don't know about you, man, but I mean, after certain hard workouts on the mats, dude, I feel like I got hit by a car. Like I'm kind of moving funny in the morning, and it's like, well, maybe by supplementing, this could potentially speed up my recovery and allow me to get back to training at a better baseline, perhaps, instead of just kind of limping my way back to the mats. So I'm intrigued by it. I think it's something to try out, and we'll report back on findings and maybe some takeaways and some key learnings here.
Cool. Well, I look forward to learning more, because I'm always about, I think, again, like noting for this cast, it's always about, for me, it's a learning experience, and what can I adopt that, now doing the lactobacillus reutieri, doing the cold plunging, all of these things that I've done, that I've implemented from these conversations they always lead to a better well-being. And it's never like we land on something and that's scripture, right? Sometimes scripture changes in the Left Coast Caveman way of life, but we're attempting to at least carve out this framework of, this is what you could implement now, today. And if somebody is listening to this and having trouble maintaining musculature or gaining muscle, or having trouble with endurance and energy throughout a long, arduous exercise, that perhaps this is something that they could adopt into their life. Or but it's different for everybody. Some people, I can tolerate whey protein like no problem. Some people can't. It's so it's something for everybody. But I had shifting into the mentality piece for this week, we left it wide open. But before I kind of go into an area of questioning that I was going to introduce, I don't want to, if you had anything like burning that you wanted to share from anything that you've read, I wanted to give you the opportunity to share that before I completely derail it and go into a line of questioning that probably has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, I could just touch on one thing that recently struck out. I'm reading this book called, and we can shift if it doesn't really work, but it stuck out to me. I'm reading this book called Play On, and it's very Left Coast Caveman oriented, as it talks about all these different modalities of training, and it uses these case studies, Olympians of the past and people, just those outliers and what makes them outliers outside of just great genes, the hard work and, these other things, like ways they're approaching training from a mentality piece, modality piece, nutrition piece. And one of the sayings, I think he was talking about, he spent some time with, with these elite operators in the, the Navy SEALs. And he talked about this saying, it was, if I remember correctly, it's, you don't have to shoot first, but you need to kill first. And I thought about that, with what we're doing with Left Coast Caveman is there's so much information out there. The Ben Greenfields of the world, the Tim Ferrisses, the Joe Rogans. There's a lot of great content out there on the YouTube available that have done it before, that have talked about ice plunges, that have talked about protein and all this. Like, you don't have to be the first to the table, but let's make the kill here. Let's make some content that's approachable, that's usable, that's easy to digest. Because you can go down, you could spend days listening to people talk about protein and come away just as confused as you were prior. And I think that's kind of in line with what we're trying to do here. Is we're not the first guys to the table here, but this content, this is I want to make something that's striking, something that really hits home, that you can use in your everyday life and become better because of it.
Yeah, and I think I can create a narrative weaving into the concept that I was thinking of, because like, what does that mean, right? To kill first, or if you think about anything that's changed the game or created an impact. Generally speaking, it is, and you use the word outliers, it's a carving out from the mold something new, or your own personal take on something. And in this world, what we're noticing, I think more and more, is that platforms that really blow up do just that. They kill an idea. There's a narrative going on right now. You can name it, like toxic masculinity, and then somebody comes out and says, no, that's bullshit. We need strong men for a strong society, period. Or, and that kills that, and like they're an outlier, and they blow up and become something substantial, and then they probably get canceled after that. It's like, so what does it mean to kill? It's like, we talk about Ben Greenfield and like Dave Asprey and these kind of people and all of these biohacking and well-being. It's like, what is our kill point? Our kill point, I think, is creating our own version of that speaks to practical people and speaks to like, and really what I'm want to accomplish more than anything through this platform is like empowering people to create their own way. It's like, and this is kind of what I was going on today. Like, one of the most powerful conversations I had this week was with somebody like talking about the influence of other people in your life and asking people for advice as it relates to like what direction you should choose, or your happiness, or your goals in life, and like seeking that fulfillment from other people or from other sources. And like, yeah, you have to do that to a degree. And that's essentially what we're trying to do as well. But again, it's like I said earlier, when it came to like the nutritional modality, it depends on your intention. And everybody has to answer that question for themselves. So like, you can only take advice so much, or take expert wisdom, or even asking your friend or asking your mom or asking your best friend, like, what should I do in this situation, so much. Eventually it's your choice. And it's like, you choose every single day, every single moment, with regard to your fitness, with regard to your nutrition, with regard to your mentality. And all we're trying to do is give people resources, but ultimately you make that choice for yourself. I make that choice for myself every day. You make that choice for yourself every day. And so it's like, what is happiness? What does that even factor in? Does it even factor in? To me, maybe not. Doesn't matter, because I'm going to make the same choices either way. Like, I'm trying to become a better human being, better well-being, through modern hunting and gathering, like hunting and gathering different resources that are out there, different nutritional modalities that are out there, different fitness modalities that are out there, and continue to improve, and build something that gives people an opportunity to make those choices better for themselves as well. But here's where the rubber kind of meets the road for me. And this is what I wanted to ask about, was like, essentially what you have is a set of scales. And like on one side, you have law and order. We can say it's cave approved. This is the cave mentality. These are the 10 commandments. This is the law of this. So you have law, you have order. And then you have what I'm saying on the other side is like everybody has something to choose. Somebody might choose to be vegan. Somebody might choose, like somebody might choose to do whatever. I mean, you name it. So that's like, there's some kind of middle ground between like law and order and relativism. And like everything can't be relative. You can't just say, well, eating Cheetos every day makes me happy, so therefore like I should eat Cheetos every day. It's like, and I always use Cheetos as an example, but it's like there has to be some kind of interfacing between the two and like a middle ground, right? And like some kind of a guideline, but then still the ability to be like a free human being and create something new, or else you're just going to stick to the mold. There is no killing it. There's no first to kill it if you don't like carve out your own personal, no, like screw the system, screw the matrix, screw what this guy's saying. I'm going to do this, So it's up to everybody every single day to find that, like, what is that thing?
I can imagine it's a balancing between order and chaos, right? Obviously going back to Jordan Peterson, he talks extensively about that. But, I think about that often, right? Like kind of riding the wave. I mean, that's like surfing, right? You're riding the chaos. You're essentially providing some order, meaning like your body moving with this chaotic, entity behind or below. Whenever I train somebody, I take somebody new into the layer and we do a training session. I mean, I always start off by asking a few key questions, regarding like, what are they looking for? Like what, and a lot of times I'll already have an idea. So I'm asking these leading questions just to dial it in. And so they also understand like the direction we're going to take. I work with a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes. So oftentimes I already know some of the things that need working on, just from rolling and experiencing them in the gym. But I ask them like, what do you, are we looking for to become faster? Are we looking to become stronger? Are we looking for better endurance? Are we looking for, better baseline, or are we looking for more anaerobic capacity? So I ask these leading questions and helps us kind of dial in kind of how we're going to go forward with training. And also so that they also understand the needs and the reasons why we're going to, embark on the next few weeks, leading up to whatever event, be it a tournament or just being better every day on the mats. So I think asking those right questions, I mean, something we all do, I think, in one way or another, but, I think the importance of actually saying it out loud, identifying it, writing it down, knowing it in the heart of hearts, right? Like having that conversation. And we all do it in our own ways, but, maybe a more formalized way of doing that. I mean, I think it's helpful for my clients. I know it's helpful for me, and it's something that's consistently reevaluated, right? Like sharpen it up. Maybe it's, this week it's going to be something else, or this next month I want to work on my speed, or I want to lower my, my lean body mass, or I want to, whatever that might be. I think that's an important piece of that balancing act.
Yeah. And sometimes I think it's like also where the law and order comes in is that you don't know what you don't know. Like some people, I think, find themselves in a situation where, like, if your first day is on the mat, you don't know if you need to be faster, stronger, or maybe you think you're fast and strong, but really what you need is fluidity and conviction in the move, and like a more stabilized mindset on what martial arts is. Like maybe you need humility. Maybe you need something that you have a blind spot that you don't even know. And that's where I think systems and research and like a law and order can come into play. And why we focus on the mentality piece of this is because like ancient wisdom has something to teach us. And there's no landing. There's no like, oh, I've got it now. It's figured out. It's like you got the next move until you get to the next obstacle that now you have to overcome. Because and that's why our platform is all about better well-being through modern hunting and gathering, and like this transcendent man and this becoming a supreme being is what we first were talking about, is because that's always going to be the case. There's always room to improve. There's always room to get better. And there's always that interfacing between like, what's the structure that I can lean on for wisdom and for this idea, but then ultimately like you have to take that and then decide in the moment. And that's what that's what I was really thinking about heavy this week, was just this, like at some point people speak into your life and tell you kind of, oh, you should do this or you should do that, or, why are you focusing on this when you could be doing more over here? And it's like, ultimately it's your choice. It's nobody lives your life but you, period. Nobody lives your life but you, and you only get to live it once. And so, you try to make the best decisions along the way, but you have to be confident in the fact that no matter what decision you make, it's yours. And you're smart enough to understand what you're doing in the moment. Sometimes people don't, sometimes people make mistakes. And the best thing that we could accomplish on this cast, I would say, and this platform and this body research on leftcoastcaveman.com, is just a landing ground through which people can then interface and make their own decisions about what they want to do. I think that's always like a challenge in some degree, because like you want to say, well, this is the way you should do things, but ultimately it's like, depends on what you want out of life,
Yeah, it's very dependent. It is. I mean, there's no straight path, and it's different for everyone. And that's just you ask anybody, and they'll give you a different answer, and that's cool though. I mean, I like that approach. I like asking questions. I'm a question guy. That makes life. I mean, I adopt, once again, go back to Jordan Peterson. One of the tenets that struck with me was, when we're having a conversation, so assume that they maybe know more than you do. Now they don't always. Like that's for certain. We know that we've met those people, but just coming to a conversation, ask those questions, and so maybe this guy does know something I don't know. So let me listen to him. And even if it's like he's spitting out some whack vegan stuff that makes no sense, or you've been conditioned to just throw out, maybe suspend that disbelief for a minute and try to understand, well, maybe there's something to what he's saying. I might instinctively disagree with all that, and I'm waiting for my chance to just fucking tell him, no, that's wrong. You're doing, maybe there's something I can pick, out of that conversation and use in my life. And I don't know, it seems to be a more friendly way to approach people and learn. We're all trying to figure things out in this weird situation. And it seems to have served me well so far. And I'm going to continue to ask those questions. Open-minded.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a good point to land on too, is like, all that being said, there can be a truth. And the truth of this project, Left Coast Caveman, is, since you and I have started doing it, life has gotten better in every respect. Healthier, happier, more productive, better control over circumstances. I mean, like, things are still going to have, there's still going to be challenges, but just, I mean, I always talk about like how there's this X factor that I'm able to accomplish certain things that some people struggle with, or some people will come to me and be like, for advice, and ask me about what to do in this situation or that. And it's like, this is the hub. This is the X factor. It's this, we're taking in these nutritional fitness and mentalities and applying them every single day. And like, how to document and like curate that, and this whole platform is what we're attempting to accomplish. And it's certain things that just work. And it's for this week, it's jumping into that cold to get you to that dark place every single day. The cold works. It's something that works. The protein and a nutritional focus on essential amino acids and getting those in abundance in your diet, for me, works. For some people it might be a heavy carb diet, but I haven't seen it. I think it leads to more inflammation. I think there's a lot of junk product out there, particularly in the carbohydrate department. I think that like leaning more on like clean fats and proteins and more of a primitive style of eating and whole foods and things of that nature tends to work out better for your cognitive ability, for your body's natural, functional mechanisms and all that kind of stuff. And then it just seems to work, man.
Yeah, and I think
things to say.
Yeah, and I think by looking at it from like it's worth more than the sum of the individual pieces type approach.
Yeah.
Think about adding all these things together, and then you arrive at some just amazing performance. I mean, that's kind of the part of it. It's like adding all these things up and seeing, does it affect the whole? I mean, and it doesn't always, like, it's not always proportional, if you will, right? Like, oh, because I'm running barefoot, does that mean that my performance is going to be, X amount better? No, not necessarily, but maybe by adding that with breath work and with all these other, with the proteins, and now you're onto something here. Now you're stacking all these attributes together. And who knows, maybe at one point by doing all that and doing it consistently, not just, I did it a few times and whatever, it didn't work for me. You have to give it a chance. And all of a sudden, before you know, maybe you become an outlier, because of all these things. And reading that book, Play On, it makes me understand that there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of different things at play when it comes to these outliers, when it comes to these, extreme athletes. And it's like, well, why not me? Why not? Why not anybody? Like, you can, maybe you don't have the time to devote to, professional mountain biking because you have a job and you have children and you're involved with these other, things that are important. But by using all these other attributes, these modalities, these nutrition and mentality pieces, like, you can become closer to that. Yeah, and I think that's that keeps me going. Adding on how to stack my training to have that supreme being type performance.
Yeah, and that's something that I always tend to leave out too. With this, is when I meant that earlier about like practical people, it is people like us with jobs, careers, families. 5 people on your payroll. It's like there's certain things that you don't get in like the Greenfield. Greenfield, he's got a family as well, but it's a lot of like the holistic health and wellness and like nutrition and self-help or whatever. Like, these people are just like, 2 25-year-olds that have never, experienced hardships in life. Like, what can they teach you really about life or about like better well-being? We're trying to figure out how to like implement all this stuff with a lifestyle and like how to hunt and gather in the modern world, like for practical people that have all of these, circumstances around them. That's really the sweet spot for us. So.
Yeah, and let's not forget. We're, most viewers may not believe this, but we're kind of middle aged at this point, and so there's a big comparison of somebody that's training at and somebody that's training at mid 30s, 40s, 50s, right? So that's where I think some of these modalities like become even more important. Now you have to focus more on recovery because you can't get away with just training hard every day. I love the idea of it, but it's like, well, that oftentimes leads to disaster. And so you have to periodize. You have to be smart about your training and utilize some of these other ways to get the most out of it. For instance, you were on the road 5 hours a day. That's hard. 5 hours plus your work day, plus putting the kids to bed. It's hard to, how do you put in all these other little bits, to add up to a good day of work, right? Of recovery, or, something, it becomes, you have to be more strategic. And I think a lot of this is a part of that overall strategy.
Yeah, because that's why it's left Coast Caveman. It's like, well, so many soft marshmallow people out there have forgotten that it's still survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
Just because we have comfy office jobs now as available to us, like, and we were sold the lie that that's an aspiration in life. It's like, no, we should be we figure out a livelihood and an occupation that you can raise a family and do all these things. Do I want to drive 5 hours one way to get to a job? No, it's like, that's not what I want to do. But if duty calls, if that's the way I provide for my tribe in my cave, well, it requires survival of the fittest. And in order for me to execute at the highest level, wherever I'm at, you got to keep the mind right. You got to keep the body right. You got to be able to jump in a cold pool, do it, do what's hard, do the hard things that are in front of you.
And I think so many people just use that excuse as well, that's why I'm not paid for, because I have too much going on. I don't have time. I can't do it. And so they relegate themselves to having this shitty body. And, they're amazed at why they're having heart issues at 45. It's like, well, what the fuck do you expect, man? Like, it's not, it's not going to just be awesome and healthy by chance. It requires programming. It requires intention, and I think unfortunately, well, I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like culturally speaking, it's just becoming more and more acceptable to just misuse your body and just, hey, I don't have time. So it is what it is. And so now we just accept just everybody walking around in this like sick form. And I'll admit, and this is going to sound a little controversial, and I don't even like this coming out of my mouth. But, back when I used to do a little more negotiating, a little more, sales and in front of people and where it's more competitive, if the person I'm trying to influence and sell to is like sickly looking, overweight, just, you could tell this is somebody that hasn't ran 5 miles in forever, couldn't, walk a few miles without having issues. I always kind of assumed that it would be an easier sell for me. And the reason why, you could tell right off the bat, this person is lacking a huge degree of discipline in their life. Now, if they can't, and they don't want to look that way, I guarantee you that. Nobody that's, with a 50% BMI, that's not where they want to be. They might convince themselves it's okay. They might, whatever protective psychological mechanisms they're using to get up every day and feel good about it. And I'm not fat shaming by no means, but I looked at it, speaking of survival of the fittest, I looked at it as an easy sell. Like, this guy, he doesn't have his shit together. So this is going to be easier for me. You know what I mean? Like, it really is like instant, and first impressions are everything, but that's usually my first impression when if I'm negotiating against somebody that's in shape, they got their shit, they're jacked, where you can tell that they're, they take pride in what they do. They put work in, and you can tell those people just instantaneously. You can tell. I always made a mental note, like, oh, this might be a little more difficult. Okay. It gave me a profile of what I'm about to do. And it sounds terrible. It is total profiling. It's kind of shitty. That was like the first thing I'd always think of. And I don't know about you, man. Like, my body is like my business card. Like, I don't want people to say, like, oh, that guy doesn't work out. He's just, just a fat body. You know what I mean? For a terrible term that, they used to use in the Army. You don't want to be that guy. Don't be that guy. And you don't need to be that guy. And that's a fucking choice.
It is. And it's an exponentially leveraging choice, because if you're willing to not have discipline and order and a system through which you do life in order to do things better, then what kind of person are you? I mean, like, how can I trust you? Because that influences every decision that you make. If your relationship with nutritional modalities is for self-serving, or it's some kind of misalignment in your mindset, and that's why it's all linked together. It's like, choose pain for pleasure, choose hardship for victory and glory, and like, that's where you get it, is pushing through the hard stuff. So yeah, man, we could go on and on, but it's always good to tie in that mental piece and to know that that's really where it starts and where it ends. Always, it's the conscious effort to know that it's all interconnected. And we've talked about that on this cast many times. It's like, why do you discipline your body and make slave your mind, or however that was? Well, it was something like that, like make savage the body, make slave the mind, or something like that. It's because it's all interconnected. It's what you have to do to continue to prosper and to achieve greatness in life. It has nothing to do with how many zeros are in your bank account. It has everything to do with what you're executing in the moment and those choices that you make every single day, and owning those choices. And that's why it's important for us we're creating this body of work for people to interface with, but ultimately it's your choice.
Yeah.
It's,
And I think it does, in a way, not going too much deeper into it. I think it does influence the amount of zeros in your pocket, the ones and zeros.
It sure does.
It really does, man. Because I tell you what, you're an employer as well. When you got, that's going to sound terrible as well, but when you got somebody, you see him gorging on this huge burrito with all his rice and beans at lunch, and it's like, oh, this dude's going to be out of commission for the next few hours. Like, those reports aren't going to get in. That guy's not getting after, the sales calls after that big meal. They're tired. They're probably, you know what I mean? Like, you just know, like, oh man, in this day and age, you're going to need the energy. You're going to need as many of those stacks as possible to keep you energized throughout the day to achieve whatever goal you might be, from securing the sale to, working out those accounting sheets and whatnot. So I think it is important, like, monetarily speaking. It's not all about that, but, it certainly helps.
Certainly helps. And yeah, this cold's now catching up to my ability to speak more on this cast, but we keep dipping our toes into things that we have to talk more about. And the energy factor is definitely one of them, because if you think about life, man, I mean, and human beings and human interaction is all about an exchange of energy. And you're exactly right. It's like, what can I, when I'm 100% on the cast or on the Left Coast Caveman way of life, and there's a specific template for that. I would say there are certain guidelines, if you will, that, like, And we could rattle them off, but I think we get together and do like the whole brainstorming session, and I think we'll align on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's there are things that are involved in the Left Coast Caveman way of life and things that are omitted. And when I'm 100% on, man, it's like the energy is through the roof. I get more done. Everybody notices that, and that increases your ability to prosper without a doubt.
Yeah. Critical. Yeah.
Prosperity to you, my friend.
All right, man. Good health. Feel better.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.